Hello, I'm Stephen A. Edwards. I'm 42 years old, live on the Upper West Side of Manhattan in New York. I'm a little concerned that I'm not nerdy enough for your competition. I think I've really had a very normal life and behaved in a very normal way, so I thought I would share some anecdotes with you, and you could decide for yourself whether they're sufficiently nerdy. Like most kids, I had a toy that I was inseparable from when I was very young. This was probably 3 or 4. In fact, one of my earliest memories. I remember it very clearly. It was a piece of copper wire with beautiful blue insulation on the outside that I would, bend and all the rest of it. So that was my first conductor. Again, I'm surprised. I've mentioned this to a few people, and they find it a little strange that I would do such a thing. But I had the impression that most kids had a favorite wiring harness, electrical cord, something like that when they were young. Like most 12-year-olds, my main focus was 6502 assembly language programming in the Apple II. This was in 1982 when Apples were the big, interesting thing of home computers and so forth. And yes, after 6 months, a year of owning our first computer, I entered a programming contest, developed a video game, again, entirely in assembly language programming. This basic stuff that most people were using at the time was, well, too basic for me. And I think I did pretty well. I think I was among the youngest entrants, but I'm kind of disappointed. I only got third place statewide in Minnesota, where I was growing up, and to this day I keep the plaque in my office. By the time I was in high school, I had largely lost interest in pure software design and had moved on to hardware-software co-design. I remember particularly in a physics class, this was probably 11th grade, we were given the assignment of building and then playing our own musical instrument. I have no idea why the teacher would choose to do such a thing. I think she must have been hard of hearing. Certainly by the end she was. Anyway, so for my project, I decided to develop an Apple II sound card using chips and so forth. So I designed the schematic for this, soldered it all together, put it into the computer, then wrote a very sizable assembly language program again presented a graphical user interface where you would drag notes around, place them on the staff, and in the end the whole thing would play Bach for me. I went to Caltech and studied electrical engineering as an undergraduate. Caltech was a lot of fun. It fit me very well. It's a sort of place where if at 2 a.m. at night you needed some super glue, you could find somebody awake and who had some for you. Another year I built something with a video graphics processor. It was capable of displaying very primitive three-dimensional shaded shapes, and so I had things like cubes and triangles and so forth that would appear on the screen and then spin around. The next year I took that same idea of spinning three-dimensional cubes and so forth and turned it into a video processor that would take analog color video in. I had bought a Laserdisc player at the time and justified the expense by saying, well, this was actually for a class project. And the result was it would take video coming in off of a Laserdisc or whatever, display it on 3 sides of a cube, and then spin the cube in real time. When I was in college, somebody had given me a broken rear projection TV, and of course it wouldn't stay broken. Why would I bother that? So a few adjustments, fix a few broken solder joints and so forth, and got the thing working. Dragged that thing up to San Francisco with me. And I remember clearly really annoying a friend of mine. He too was a PhD student in electrical engineering. One day he brought his then girlfriend over to my apartment, and we watched this big TV together. And I explained the story about how I'd gotten this thing broken and had fixed it myself. And she looked at me and said, "Oh, wow, so you're the useful kind of double E." I want to take you on a tour of my office here. I'm filming this in my office. It's rather cramped, honestly. And part of the reason is I have a number of full-size video arcade games. This one's actually from 1979, Sega's Monaco GP, which is notable because it was the very last one built entirely out of discrete logic parts. It does not have a computer in it. And so that's in contrast, say, to Sega's Hang-On here, which of course had a processor in it. I have a few books, few computer books here, a couple of bicycles, one for myself, one for my son, lots and lots of sort of leftover computer junk, and I'll show you my monitor setup here. Oh, I have an antique SGI and Sun machine on my desk, which I use for demos in my classes. And then here's the 4-screen setup that I have. And with luck, hey, there we go, we got some video feedback going. What I do is really pretty normal, right? My family and I just returned from 6 weeks in Paris, where I was visiting another school there and a bunch of professors, very nice. And I bought the usual souvenirs you bring back from Paris. Here's mine. It's a 1972 era desktop calculator. Operates on 4 C batteries because it has neon lights inside. One of my odder collections, I suppose, is my collection of pointless USB devices. I have one here. It is a USB Christmas tree. I show this off to my class when I'm trying to explain to them what USB is. And it's very nice. You take this out and plug it into a USB jack, and it lights up in a variety of colors. And it's very nice. Comes with a user manual and everything. Here we are, 7-color LED with low power consumption. No software or drivers needed for installation. This is very nice. I have a number of main boards from 80s era video arcade games. They're relatively small since they're not in big boxes and all the rest of it, but still I have rather a problem with them accumulating. Anyway, I have quite a variety of them, a pretty good collection of them that I've bought, fixed, and are now working, others that still need to be repaired. Anyway, one that I'm most proud of, and one that most people can understand, is a Pac-Man board. Here it is. I bought this, as usual, off of eBay, like everybody would, and it was, of course, completely broken. In particular, it had no sound, no video, basically did nothing. And so what I ended up doing was replacing the microprocessor, replacing the audio chip, which had burned out for whatever reason, building an adapter to bring it more in line with a more standard, this is called a JAMA pinout, having to fix the power cables a little bit. That's what you have here. All of the ROMs, the EPROMs, were of course broken, so I went and downloaded new versions of those off the internet, burned the chips themselves, installed them. Oh, and because the chips on these original machines are a little bit different, I had to change the wiring ever so slightly on the back of the board to make it all work. Anyway, I feel like I've earned the opportunity to play Pac-Man. What you're looking at here is, in the box, is a Galaga PC board that I bought off of eBay, and then I adapted it. So I built a little adapter that connects it up to more modern things. You can see in the box an unfortunate obsession with 1980s era video arcade games, since this is when I was coming to growing up and really did not have too many quarters. So what you're looking at here is, in the box, is a Galaga PC board that I bought off of eBay, and then I adapted it. So I built a little adapter that connects it up to more modern things. You can see in the box a power supply, a video converter that takes the analog RGB video and stuffs it into a more modern VGA that can then be displayed on a flat panel. The joystick there, which is functional, was a USB joystick that I gutted and then adapted for use in this setting. As I mentioned, one of my concerns was that I would be insufficiently nerdy for this competition. So I thought the one way to test this would be to select the nerdiest thing in my office, show it to you, and if this was insufficiently nerdy, you could discount me at that point. So I think what that is this deck of cards. It's for a game called CPU Wars. I've never actually played the game, but that's not the point. The point is what are the cards themselves. And they're a standard deck of playing cards, except that rather than being labeled normally, they have processor statistics. So here is the AMD Athlon, maximum clock speed 1.4 gigahertz, maximum bus speed 266 megahertz, introduced in 1999, and similar information for a whole variety of processors. Now, personally, I thought this was a fairly nerdy object and made a Facebook post to this effect. However, a friend of mine quite accurately corrected me, pointing out that this was in fact the second nerdiest thing in the office, at least when I was there. Another collection that I have that I'm reasonably proud of is my collection of vintage Intel processors. So this is the original Pentium. Oh, I'm sorry, this is actually the one with the MMX extensions, excuse me very much. This is the Pentium 2, which they put in a much bigger package, mostly to make you feel better about spending the money. Here's the Pentium 3, and it really seems like it's a JIP, right? You know, you can actually see the die itself. It seems a lot smaller than the rest, but it worked pretty well. Oh, I forgot, and one of my favorites, this is the Pentium Pro, and it actually is that large. Let me hold it up against the actual Pentium itself here. It's quite a lot larger, and this is really cool because it has gold-plated pins on the back, and it's actually quite heavy. It's a big ceramic package. And then, of course, here is a Pentium 4, again removed from what was probably a working computer. It's hard to say. My obsession with early video arcade games has really gotten to extraordinary heights at this point. So this is a creation from last year. This is a reconstruction of Pong. And so to do this, I sat down with the schematics for the game itself, which you can download off the internet, and reprogrammed them in VHDL and programmed them onto the chip on this board here. And you can actually see it's Pong because, of course, I built it to actually say Pong. One of my favorite reconstructions on an FPGA is of an Apple II. I did this a number of years ago. You can see it here playing Raster Blaster in an early commercial game. And again, I did this on an FPGA. And here it is, the chip. It's displaying a little bit of diagnostic information. Oh, what's particularly fun is I took my 2 or 3 linear feet of 5 1/4 inch discs, scanned them a while ago, and put them all on this rather modest size by today's standard SD card. What I've done here is written a short basic program that does a little bit of video, a little bit of graphics. Here it is, prints a bunch of colored lines, and let's go ahead and run it and see what it looks like. And yes, sure enough, it displays a whole bunch of things. And I want to leave on this particular note, I'll have my computer speak for me, which is usually how it's done. But do please pick me.